this is Nathan on Shuffle, and I've got an exciting show for you guys today. This is my next installment in New Music Shuffle, where I feature a couple quick shot reviews of some albums that I've been enjoying lately. And on the docket today, I have quite an interesting list, and so I thought I'd get into those and talk about them a little bit. So the first one is Ciccada from Greece. The album is called Harvest, and this is a very interesting band that has this very folky, kind of Canterbury almost vibe to them. Sounds a lot like Gentle Giant or Griffin is kind of an influence that I see here. Very folky, almost maybe even Jethro Tull. Definitely with the instrumentation, there's some flute and some saxophones and things like that. That are in the mix, some acoustic guitar. It just has this really cool, complex, folky vibe to it. There's some female vocals, which are very interesting. Male vocals. There's a lot of vocal counterpoint kind of things like what Gentle Giant does. I just think this is a really varied, interesting record that definitely deserves to be heard. I really love all the tracks on it. It starts off on a high note with Eleutheromania, which kind of has this vocal chant to it, underpinned by this great, complex, proggy instrumental stuff with that folky vibe that I mentioned. Open Wings features that female vocal that I like on the album, more of that folkiness and great vibe to it. The Old Man and the Butterfly kind of leans into psych a little bit. There's a lot of varied and interesting things going on in the mixture. No Man's Land, like a lot of the album, reminds me of Engelgard or Wobbler or bands like that kind of have that old symphonic feel to them, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the mixture, a lot of almost chaotic music, but it all fits together somehow in a very complex, fun fashion, which is what I love in my prog music. It's just very eclectic, and there's a lot to it just going off in the mix. Who's to Decide is kind of one of my favorites. I really love the Gentle Giant feel, the almost funkiness to it. It has some of that vocal counterpoint that I was mentioning. Definitely really cool vibes to it. Very positive, happy, fun music. And I really like that. It's kind of refreshing to hear that when some of the modern prog that I hear lately is kind of moody and depressing and dark, but this is just very uplifting and fun. And I highly recommend it for that. It's just really has a great vibe to it, is positive, eclectic, and really contains all these hallmarks of old progressive rock, all of this, complex, eclectic prog like Gentle Giant, Griffin, Jethro Tull. The folkiness is definitely there in spades. So I strongly recommend that one. I think that is a super strong new album that definitely deserves being checked out by people who love that style of progressive rock. The next album I have on my list, very different from that one, totally kind of almost an opposite flavor to it. This is a band called Trope, and their album is Eleutheromania. This is a really cool album. I really love the vibe to it. This is more really has prog influences perhaps, but isn't really very proggy in my opinion. It's more alternative rock, modern rock, stuff that you would have heard maybe in the late 90s to mid 2000s. Just really has that kind of hard rock feel to it, but there's little progressive tinges that introduce itself in the mix. It kind of reminds me of Evanescence, a lot because of the female-fronted nature. The lead vocalist is Diana Studenberg, and she's fantastic and has that kind of Amy Lee Evanescence vibe to her singing, but just also in the heaviness and the alternative sound that kind of harkens back to that early 2000s feel of like hard rock and metal being infused in alternative rock. And I really love all the tracks here are all really top-notch. The production is really solid. This is a band from LA, and it features great producing. I love so many tracks on it. There's kind of a Tool vibe throughout the album, or A Perfect Circle is another good reference. I feel that throughout the album, these kind of polyrhythms, but in a more accessible, shorter poppier vein. And so it's a cool blend of things. Songs like Lambs and Surrogates and Pareidolia, very reminiscent of Tool, very inspired by that. And I think that's a conscious inspiration from the band. They also have a cool cover version of Shout by Tears for Fears, which I found really fascinating. I'm not usually a big cover person, especially if the cover kind of sounds just like the original, but they put a unique stamp on this one. It has this alternative sound that harkens back to those alt rock of the 90s days and brings the song into a new realm and really updates it in a fascinating way. So I strongly recommend that track. Plateau is a great highlight with interesting guitar lick through the verses and then a powerful chorus. It kind of brings to mind Alter Bridge is another reference that I thought of as I was listening to this. Just really powerful, crunchy, hard rock, but with a little bit of more interesting, varied stuff going on in the guitars and in the instrumentation that make it more palatable for maybe a proggier audience. So just really solid, cool, hard rock music that I think deserves some attention. So definitely another recommended one if you like this style. I think it's really, really well crafted, really well made. The songs are really, really well done and all fit together really well, and it's just a really cohesive listen. So I really recommend that one as well. The third album on my list, which kind of goes in a whole different direction than either of those other two that I mentioned, is Odd Dimension. The Blue Dawn is really cool. It's like this very sci-fi-ish concept album, kind of in the vein of like Ayreon. It has a lot of progressive metal influences such as Dream Theater and Symphony X and that type of stuff. But I'm also noticing a lot of more, maybe a harder edge symphonic prog, kind of almost along the lines of Neil Morse band, is kind of what drew me in, especially in the early opening tracks. I almost feel like the opening really brought to mind The Creation by Neil Morse. It's this big, sweeping, grand, sci-fi, epic opening, and it kind of brought that feeling to me. And then they go into this kind of overture-esque, instrumental section in the next track, landing on Atraxidel, and it has a feel like a modern Neil Morse band album, like something from Similitude or Great Adventure. Just this guitar line that just really sounded familiar to me from that era. So it has that side to it, but it also has this kind of AOR, arena rock kind of tinge to it, kind of like a 70s arena rock like Journey or Styx or something like that is also in the mix, especially in the vocal stylings is what I was noticing. Just this really powerful, expressive vocalist. Several vocalists actually. There's female vocals, kind of like Ayreon, there's different vocalists that are kind of giving the different narratives for the album. It's a really crazy story. I just want to read the kind of quick synopsis here from the band because it might interest you. It says it's a tale of two protagonists, space travelers Marcus and Eloise. As they embark on a journey through space, they hit some trouble as they are attacked by an unknown population on their journey, which forces them to land on the blue planet. Here they must struggle to survive while creating an army to help restore order. So a very big, high concept, if you love sci-fi stories and concepts like I do, that's intriguing to me to unpack that kind of a story through this album. So a lot of really cool stuff going on in the album. Like I said, Ayreon vibes throughout, some heavy, really cool instrumental passages. Female vocals feature throughout. I love kind of a break in the heaviness of Solar Wind, which is a really cool instrumental piece that's kind of almost classical in its vibe with some piano and strings, and it's kind of one of my favorite moments of the record, even though it's so different than all the stuff surrounding it. And Life Creators, if you're going to seek out one track, I think Life Creators is a definite contender. It's a great, hard-driving, cool, modern track with some crazy instrumental stuff going on in the mix. Definitely a great highlight of the album. And there's a lot to enjoy. Maybe it can be a bit of a mixed bag at times. Some stuff maybe works better than others. But overall, there's just so much here to enjoy and to have fun with. I think it's a blast of a record that I just totally enjoyed, even more than I was anticipating when I started playing it. So definitely had to feature that and recommend it. So for all fans of Ayreon and maybe some of the more progressive metal concept albums, this is definitely a strong recommendation. It's a band from Italy, and they've really hit their mark here. I think this is a strong release from them, and I'm interested to see where they go from here. So definitely a recommendation for fans of that style of progressive metal. So those are the albums. Really interesting stuff to listen to and to check out. I hope something here piqued your interest. I wanted to kind of promote my Spotify playlist, which I haven't talked much about in my videos. I've created a Spotify playlist where I feature a lot of the tracks from these new albums that I talk about. So the link is in the description, so please visit my Spotify. I'd love if some of you followed me there and saw what I was listening to and kind of joined in that community. So that's something that I'm trying to pick up and start up. And as always, keep subscribing and enjoying the music. I'm thankful for the attention, for all the positive feedback, and hopefully I've introduced someone out there to something that they end up loving, because that's really the purpose here of what I'm trying to do. So thank you all for your comments, for all the subscribing, and please continue to enjoy whatever music you want, and let me know if there's any new albums that you've been loving that you think might be worth featuring in a show like this. So thanks again, and once again, enjoy the music.